Hello, everyone. I'm Margaret. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Ken, and to the Asian American Writers Workshop. And I'm so glad the Transliterary Project is moving. It was so much fun to be involved in the Indonesian part of it. And I hope you all look at Jyoti, who's with the workshop, and I worked together, and we had so much fun doing it. My only regret is that we didn't include your work in it, but now I'm so glad that we're making up for it tonight. Many of you are Indonesian, so you don't need that much of a background on the role of pesantren in Indonesian education, Indonesian religion, and Indonesian culture. It's very interesting for me to see this film, to remember that it was a while ago. Suharto was still in power, and the pesantren were somewhat considered second class. That is no longer true, and I would love to explore some of the ways in which pesantrens have changed since you wrote your novel, and the way in which pesantrens and Islam have changed in this era of democratic opening since 1998. So, first of all, why do you think this film is so popular, given that it really talks about a time that's almost gone?
Because it's like Harry Potter. No, I'm kidding. Well, the way I introduce my novel and my film to American audience, normally I will tell them, my novel is like Harry Potter without magic. But we have our Dumbledore. We haven't shown him yet. We have our mantra, not Potranus, but Manjada Wajada. So to answer your question again, for so long, we have pesantren or madrasah in Indonesia, and we have many of them. And for quite some time, people know about pesantren through news. But somehow, there is no real story from inside a pesantren. There is no report from a pesantren what is actually the life inside the pesantren. So I think I was lucky to be the first novelist to write what is life inside a pesantren. So I think people are curious to know what is inside pesantren. I think I opened the door to the pesantren and tell the story from inside. And second, I believe Indonesia always like to, most of us, we want to improve our life through education. And unfortunately, not everybody can afford good education. But here in the movie and in the novel, you don't have to have a expensive education to be able to be someone. But the most important thing is you try your best, you focus, and somehow in my religion, you believe in God, and we try really hard. We do our prayer. Eventually, you get the reward. So you remember Manjada Wajada. The English translation is, "He who gives his all will surely succeed." So I think it's some answer there, but we can elaborate more later, I think.
Madani is based on probably the most famous pesantren with an extremely important intellectual history in Indonesia. It's called Guntur. And it was a wonderful education, obviously. They stressed English as well as Arabic. And as you write in your novel, that the whole point of the friendships that you made and what you learned was to be open to the world. And so it was this adventure story. It is actually the Harry Potter of pesantrens. I mean, the what do you call it? What's the place called?
Hogwarts. They
sorry.
have Hogwarts Express. I have Bus Express or something.
And your friends all go hither and yon around the world. That's the end of the story. It's open, pluralist. It's a very the face of Islam that so many people associate with Indonesia, and it's increasingly under threat. And I want to get to that. But did you propose when you wrote your novel that you really wanted to show not just what life was like in a pesantren, but that it was a wonderful life that led you all to go around the world and be global citizens and pluralist and tolerant.
Yes, when I start writing, actually, my intention was to celebrate my education in Pesantren. Because like on the movie, actually the movie and the story follow my own story, the main structure, of course. But I introduce some more drama because my life sometimes is boring, so I need more drama and more characters. But yes, it's to celebrate the education that I got in Pesantren. When I was forced by my mother to go in Pesantren, I don't want to go. And I protested my mother. But you know, for Minang people, I come from the ethnic group called Minangkabau in Western Sumatra. We have matrilineal system that mothers, women have certain power in the society. You will inherited the wealth through the blood of mothers. You will get a family name from the mother's line. So in my village, in my ethnic group, we have a legend called Malin Kundang. Malin Kundang is someone that's not obedient to his mother, and he turned to rock, crying rock. So it's like a brainwashing. So I suppose I don't want to be another Malin Kundang to turn into a rock. So I follow my mother's wishes to go to a Pesantren. But it turned out to be quite different from what I thought. In a Pesantren, for the first time, I know Indonesia because I come from a small village. But in the Pesantren, I met 3,000 students coming from all different parts of Indonesia, from Aceh to Papua, and even from outside Indonesia, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, even from the US. So students come from different parts of the world, actually. That opened the horizon. And I'm so grateful for going there. And the book is to celebrate that.
It's a wonderful story because education did play such an important role in the evolution, the emergence of the independence movement in Indonesia, which actually Ahmad is researching right now. But Guntur in particular plays such an interesting role in not the independence movement, but the movement to overthrow dictatorship. Nurholis Majid went to Guntur, and he and Abdul Rahman Wahid were probably the spiritual leaders of the transition to democracy. And they both were very affiliated with Guntur. And after you left, you covered the fall of Suharto for Tempo. In the 20 years since democracy has been consolidated or not, it's been a rocky road, how would you say Guntur fits in now, the Pesantren and Guntur in particular, in this democratic era?
Well, Guntur tried to keep the same spirit. We have four motto. The first one, whoever student who graduate from Guntur, our Dumbledore or our Kiai, always tell us, you need to have four motto. First ones, you have to have a noble character. That's the first ingredient to be a Guntur student. Not the skill, not the education, not the academic, but noble character. And the second, you have to have a sound body, healthy body. That's quite interesting. Why healthy bodies become the second one? Maybe because the founder of Guntur, they have been a warrior or fighter against Dutch before. And the third one, you have to have a broad knowledge. And the fourth is quite interesting thing. You have to have independent mind. So that why the graduate of Guntur can be anybody. I mean, from different angle. They can be the the leftists and the rightists. So I think Guntur tried to hold to that value But of course, there are challenges, especially now. Gontor is not the only alternative for education, for Muslim education. That we have more modern pesantren right now. Some pesantren now is like a very high-class dormitory school with very expensive tuition. From my perspective, that's the struggle, how to keep the value, because we don't have Gontor if you don't have value, and the value that they try to keep. And the generation of the leader of Pesantren changed now. So how to keep it from one generation to another? I think that's the...
So I'd love to know your reaction to the fact that Bakhtiar Natsir, a graduate of Gontor, was probably the most important leader of the Bela Islam movement. Bela Islam was a political earthquake in contemporary Indonesia. It was a mass mobilization against the sitting governor who was running to be elected as full-time governor, a Christian Chinese named Ahok. And this mass mobilization was designed to say that a non-Muslim should not be a governor or a president, and no Indonesian that's a Muslim should vote for a non-Muslim. Up to 1 million people went to the streets to pursue this agenda. And there were quite a few of Gontor graduates that were in it. And as you say, there's also Gontor graduates that were against it. But as a reflection of what's happened in the 20 years, what do you make of the fact that there were many intellectuals trained at Gontor that were very involved in the Bela Islam movement?
Well, I have the same question too. So I'm curious what my headmaster think about it. So a few years ago, I met him. I went back to my school, and I talked to my Kiai. So what do you think about this colorful profession and thought of graduate of this school? And he told me, well, first, if you see a leftist, meaning Gontor is not rightist. Or if you see our graduate is rightist, meaning Gontor is not leftist. So if we have this different color, the different perspective of our graduate, actually they live up to our value, the fourth value, independent mind. So I also subscribe to his belief that it's a natural things, because we propose, we encourage students in Gontor to have different thought. One of the reference that we read at school is called Bidayatul Mujtahid. Bidayatul Mujtahid, written by a scholar from Spain, talking about different law of Islam from different perspectives that can be quite contrary to another, and it's our staple food actually. We read it through. So I think it's logical consequences of the value now, and my headmaster think that's the reality. So I would think I will support his view that that's Gontor. Yeah.
Recent analysis from polling, looking at the political situation, it has. I can cite a bunch of figures, but it's pretty boring. There's been a growing intolerance among Muslims in Indonesia, and it has now gone, because of the Bela Islam movement, from a marginal view to the absolute mainstream view that non-Muslims should not run for politics. So it's democracy really is a majoritarian democracy, if that is held. And 59% of Indonesians will not vote for a non-Muslim for president or governor. These trends seem very different than the Land of Five Towers that you depicted. And I'm wondering what you think of why this growing intolerance, this growing insistence on a particular kind of Islam and a particular kind of politics have taken root in Indonesia.
I think now we have new wave of middle class and younger generation that find Islam to their liking. They're more serious into Islam, but it's not necessary they have a religious educational background. So somehow they willingly to learn Islam, but maybe not as comprehensive as a Pesantren graduate. And sometimes it tends to be like black and white. While if we learn in a Pesantren, we have more nuances of Islam. Like I told you before, we learn different perspectives of Islam from different angles, sometimes quite contrary to another. So it's make us have a wider perspective in seeing issues, events, and things that we think related to religion. So I believe good thing is people now is interested in religion more, but more education need to be done to open up the perspective. Well, Islam is not always black and white like that. We have something in between if we read through different books about Islam. And most of Pesantren graduate, I think, they are more open to differences. I believe that's the case right now. Yeah.
The issue of increasing interest in among Muslim Indonesians in their religion and their identity as Muslims is clear in popular culture, in films, in novels. And I was wondering if I could bring Lutfi into the conversation. Some people call it pious pop culture. Some people label it other different ways, but films have been a pretty important aspect of that. I wonder if you could tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think the film about Islam, it's become a trend nowadays, and it's become like a blockbuster. Before we have like just horror film and like sex things, so and it's become like anticlimax, and that and after that it's coming the film like a pop film. It's that's open like it. I forgot about the year, but it's open like a new generation of movie makers. And then after that, it follows by the director that want to speak about the Muslim with the ayat-ayat cinta, and then the like Assalamualaikum Beijing and like Sorban, what is it? Yeah. It's and then it's always become like a trend, and that's very interesting. But the problem for us here in the United States about the film about Indonesian culture, it's always need to be translated. I mean, it's not in a word, but when you see this film, like how they trade inside the sarung, right? That's the tradition of the Minangkabau people. That's very interesting. But as a movie makers, if he dig more, maybe in the book, it's like more deeper with that thing. That's the problem of the movie makers when they read the books, and the book has so many values inside. It's just too much. They worry if this book is not representing like the whole of this. I think it's better if just like take this part and that's it. Just forget about the rest, and then more
Go
like
deeper.
Yeah, like what he did with this. Maybe he put inside in the life in Pesantren, like Manjada Wajada. The director is like stressing like like and why it's happened. Is it like that in Pesantrens, like like the teacher bring a sword. It's for the American perspective. I learned from my audience when in most of Indonesian said this is a good film, so I tried to screen it here. But after that, I like get bombarded by like why it's weird, why is this, and I have to like explain like, oh, this is it's always our homework for us at the Indonesian Film Forum to tell the story about the film itself. It's like why it's this, is it common like in a terminal, like so many people in front of the bus when the bus is it's something like that that we didn't see,
And the food.
And then like what is rendang, and it's only Indonesian can understand, and or people that already related to Indonesian that can understand the film. But when we bring like a naked film, boom, to United States, hey, this is a good film, and everybody look at me like, what is this? It's like, yeah, it's kind of like that.
So, two parts. I agree with you, and I'm wondering whether for both of you, I've noticed in the films that stress Islam, usually it's a rural setting, and there's almost a nostalgia because Indonesia is one of the most quickly urbanizing countries in the world, and has some mega cities, and a lot of people are leaving the village and going to the city, and I wonder whether you think that this Pesantren story, village stories, bring up some kind of this is who we are, even though we all live in cities now and skyscrapers. Do you think that's some of the appeal?
Yes, and I think if people make the film like that, they're supposed to like give more value in it. So people like outside Islam, or like I'm Islam but I don't know about Islam thing, or my parents is Islam but I don't know anything about Islam. Nowadays they learn from YouTube, from Facebook, from everywhere, right? But there is no like his film. His film is telling like detail inside, not like scramble everything together and then, oh, this is Islam, and then they found the radical Islam, they found the other Islam, they found like, it's kind of weird because some people asking me like, why Islam is like this, like that, like this, like that, like that. While the other side, we have like another Islam. So with this film, it's always my, I'm hoping that the movie maker can tell us the value of Islam. It's very easy. Like even with the short film, but they have many now, the short film and also about the Muslim that tell us about the value of this Islam itself.
Well, I think people like to romanticize things to remember the good days. So when we talk about Islam and the village background, it's always nice to watch for most of Indonesian. And for parents, normally they will talk to their children that what we have done before, that we did, and now you should follow. So in terms of entertainment, I think that the value is there. So it's good for the family, for the moviegoer with the family, not only parent, not only children, but the whole family going to the theater. And normally it's value, there is a message of the important value to the family. So it's, in terms of the industry, I think it's still good to sell the movie like this. And from me as an author, as a writer, I also have my agenda, of course, to insert some value that I believe in. So yeah, that's still the situation right now.
Yeah,
even if
now it's become like a good business, right?
Yes.
And for TV serials
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well, and Ramadan,
Yeah, if it's
Sinetron.
and then they make another story. Like before, it's only like short film, and then next year it's become like
Series,
season 1 series, and then it's like
Game of Thrones, right?
640 something. Yeah, I'm so surprised.
It's quite big
with-
business. On that note, I'd love it if you would entertain some questions from the audience.
If you could give advice to your younger self, the one just starting out as an author, what would you tell him?
As an author?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will tell him to read more. And I tell you a story. When I was like a toddler, like 5 years old, I live in a small village next to the Lake Maninjau that we just seen in the movie. To me, my world is only the lake and the surrounding, because it's all volcano that's erupted and it's become a caldera and it's transformed into a lake. So there is nothing to do with outer world. But I have a grandfather who has a secret room. It's like 3 meters by 4, and it's closed. It's very restrictive. Only certain people can be allowed to go there. And I was lucky to be one of them. So when I opened the door, it's a room full of books. From floor to ceiling is full of books. It is his private library. And I couldn't read. But after a while, I start flipping pages. And I saw the world for the first time. So I would tell my younger self, read more. It's open the world. For me, it's literally open my world. Yeah.
Terima kasih.
Makasih, Pak. In Indonesian also, boleh.
Yes, I have one question. How do you compare between the novel and the films? I know this everybody asks about this, right? So,
well, later at the end of our discussion, I will read the last chapter so you can compare. But when the movie was out, my Facebook was full of comments from my readers, and not many of them are happy. Most of them protesting the film. Why the scene like this? Why the role, the characters like that? So when you read a book, you actually build your own cinema inside your head. And now a director will have his own version and you have to watch it. So my feeling is quite mixed, mixed feeling, yeah. But having seen the whole process of making a movie, you yourself is a movie maker. It's a lot of work, involves so many different people, involve like thousands of students posing as in one of the scene. How to deal with artists from different skills. Artists is quite, sometimes it's hard to work with. So having said that, I think we did the best through that experience. But I wish we could do better, but for now it's okay. So now we are working on the second movie based on my second novel, the Ranah Tiga Warna. It's been delayed like for 3 years, but last week they went to Quebec in Canada to do the recce for the movie, and hopefully they will start shooting this year, hopefully. So I hope the next movie will be better.
Are you involved in the making of the sequel?
Well, I was part of the team, but I'm not the final decision maker. They called me the creative consultant. So I consult mostly on the script writing, but after that, that's their decision. Because a movie will be made 3 times. First during the script writing, second during the shooting, and the third during editing. So it can be quite different from the blueprint or from the script, but I'm involved in the script writing. I'm not the script writer, but every draft will go through me. Yeah.
Lutfi made the argument that less is more in taking a book to a film. Could you elaborate on that? And I wonder whether you agree.
Yeah, it's always difficult, like how to tell a story about if you are like you reading like a letter, right? And then how you gonna tell this story about what is inside the letter? It's so many things different in the movies. You can just like somebody like with a sound like "Dear my love" or something like that, and then you know what is inside, and then it's just like this, and the eyes is like this. So, oh, what's gonna happen? And then the next scene. Oh, this is the what is inside the letter. So, that's the challenge of the movie makers, how to make film to interpret the books, and most of them fail. For me, I think most of them is always fail to give us like what we expect inside this. I'm sure that the book is like really strong, like when he told us about the Pesantren, how the character is as the Mike Tyson character is so
You remember
strong.
the Mike Tyson?
Yeah, and everybody afraid, and yeah, something like that. But in that stress situation, how they connect together and become brothers, and yeah, something like that. But in this film, it's just like it's nothing. So for sorry about okay.
I'm not a movie maker.
Yeah,
so
I mean
okay.
that's how we for me, because I watch film a lot, so I have to like curate this film, or I will screen this in New York or no. So that's how I see the film.
Do you have any reaction to that?
Well, I'm very open-minded about it,
Yeah.
because I'm not a movie maker, so I'm free from any criticism. But yeah, we could do better with the movie. Actually, yeah, I wish we could do better, and hopefully the next installment will be much better. And yeah, let's see.
Yeah, that's a challenge of movie makers actually, how to explain something that the Indonesian movie makers is always like that. They always interpret that we understand their film. That's the problem. It's like a big problem for us. They always telling us like, hey, can you help us like screen this film to New York, and then it's become like international. And then when I watch the film, it's like, what is this? It's like, I'm Indonesian. Yes, I can understand like the all of the story inside. But New Yorkers is, it's always in our program book. We have to like really hard to type something inside just to tell what is the story behind this thing. Like with the picture with Hatta and Hamka, right? It's
selling 1,000 words.
It's
right?
it's 1,000 word
But
there.
only Indonesians know it.
And the Indonesian
it's
know
very
it.
culturally related.
There's a question.
I don't have a question, but I think I agree with Lutfi since we have the same name. But
You share the same
no, the
name.
thing is, I think as Indonesian we know the culture, but as for Americans or for other people like from different culture, they don't know about Indonesian culture. So I think the Indonesian filmmakers need to dig in more into one thing rather than telling everything, but there's no meaning for other people.
I'm throwing this out to both of you and to the audience. Is Indonesia more difficult? I mean, there's international films from many countries, and they find an audience, and novels from everywhere. Is understanding Indonesia, is it more complex? Is it more difficult to understand for outsiders than other places?
Because I think we have like a lot of, even when we saw the film about the what is it, 90 degrees Atambua. Yeah, it's
Yes.
about Nusa Tenggara, right? And then when Javanese people saw it, it's like, wow, this Nusa Tenggara. It's new for Javanese. That's new for Japanese, and we can imagine how it's gonna react, like impacting to the outsider, like not Indonesian at all. So yeah, but we are now in Indonesia. We have like many movie makers from small, like from Makassar, from Medan, not from Jakarta anymore, because Jakarta is already like boring or something, or too industrial. And now it's from Jogja, from Ponorogo, Situbondo. It's that area. They have like a good film. Like it's very interesting because they just like shooting, and it's a march. It's good. It's a good one, and tell us like something. It's very small. They just like shooting their neighborhood, and like, oh, this is good. Yeah, that's what's happened today in Indonesia.
Do you think Indonesia is more difficult to be understood?
Well, just seeing from the statistic, we have 16,000 island, 360.
17,000 is it?
17,000 now, officially from the consulate. Okay. And more than 300 ethnic groups. So even for Indonesians, sometimes it's not easy to grab the whole Indonesia, the narrative of Indonesia. So it's a work in progress, I think. I'm quite optimistic to be an Indonesian. Indonesia is, the main challenge for Indonesia is how to make us stick together with this colorful background. But thanks to Bahasa Indonesia, our unified language is actually doing great to make us united. Language is the first window to open the discussion in Indonesia. So it's still working in progress, I think, and hopefully we're getting better. Well, I would like to introduce my editor, my personal editor, my wife, and my son Salman. Well, I'm serious. She worked full time at Chevron, but every chapter that I finish, I give it to her, and she will criticize and make it changes and everything. So thank you.
Wonderful. Does anybody else have a question or a
Oh,
comment?
yeah, here. I didn't read your book yet, but I believe the book is better, so I'm going to read it at some point. I look
It's
forward
available
to
on Amazon.
I will. So you went to a religious school and you write about it, in nostalgia, and you had, I would say, like a positive experience there. I'm from Saudi Arabia, and I didn't go to a religious school, but I grew up in a very religious community. And there's something that I noticed about my friends who went to religious schools, who studied the religion with more, who studied thoroughly. And I feel like they don't have a middle ground with it because, in a community like Saudi, you can't use religion as you please. You have to either follow through or like you're in the bad side. So with the people I knew, they're either very conservative radicals or very liberal radicals. And I was wondering if this is something you discuss in your books or like you want to talk about it. And I know Saudi Arabia is very different than Indonesia, but I believe, with Islam in this religion, or like in all religions in general, there's always those radicals who exist everywhere. So is this something you discuss in your books, or you want to talk about it, or maybe you will talk about it at some point? And yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Kaifa hal? Well, in my novel, and also based on my experience in my Pesantren or in my madrasah, we continually try to strike the balance between these two, between dunya and akhirah, between life here and life in hereafter, and to strike the balance between your religious knowledge and your other than religious knowledge. So it's continuous effort, I think. And in my book, yes, I talk a lot about it, how to strike a balance, how to be, you're Muslim, but you're not anti-modern, you're not anti-everything, but you are in the middle. So we also have like, sometimes I will describe it like a smiling Muslim, something like that. But you have to read the whole book to get it. But you're right. I try to say it through the story. Yes.
So,
or the opening chapter?
Yeah.
The closing chapter?
please, thank you.
Okay, well, let me read for you the last chapter. I hope. Don't get sleepy. So the first part of the story we have seen on the movie is a traveling part. It's an introduction part that the main character get together and they forge a strong friendship during the story. And you know, a friendship that forged together inside any dormitory school is a friendship for life. You can talk to any seminary student, to any Hogwarts student, they will agree. Okay, so this is the last part. Hundreds of thousands of handshakes. 2 weeks had passed since we had celebrated the end of exams. They were the 2 most relaxing weeks we had ever enjoyed at our school. We did many activities from bully style sport tournaments between the year 6 student and the teachers, up to attending various debriefing seminars. My friend Said unleashed his desire to play sports again. Raja, Atang, and I were busy going back and forth from library collecting information on any university we might attend after graduation. We look at brochure to study in the Middle East, Al-Azhar, Medina University, and also in Europe and America, and local university. Our graduation announcement is up. You can see it now in the hall. Said, my friend, as the head of our class, shouted after dawn. Even though we are still aching from the previous day trip, we couldn't wait to flock to the hall, even though I had wholeheartedly left in God's hands. My heart was still pounding when I looked at the announcement posted in the hall. My eyes followed my fingers, searching for my name on the bulletin board. And there it was, my name, Alif Fikri. Beside it in Arabic were Nun, Jim, and Ha. It mean pass. Alhamdulillah. After breakfast, the year 6 students gathered in front of Kiai Rais' house. Kiai Rais is our Dumbledore, yeah? In small groups, we were called up to take our transcripts and receive advice directly from Kiai Rais and other senior teachers. With this, we perfect our mandate to your parents to educate you the best we could. Return home to give back to society with your best. Remember, on your forehead there is a stamp of our school. Be a blessing for universe. Search for the road of knowledge and charity throughout the world. Remember Imam Shafi's advice. Civilized men will not only stay home, leave your land and stay on another, travel. So farewell, my children, said Kiai Rais in his final advice. His glowing eyes stared at us, glassy. It was quiet and serene. That night there was a judicium and khutbatul arash, a farewell sermon. After some short remarks and a prayer of gratitude, all of us six-year students stood up in a line that snaked around the hall. I stood together with the fellowship of the Menara, not fellowship of the ring. Yeah? So the name of the 6 students that come together as friends, they call themselves the fellowship of Menara. Menara is a minaret, the tower next to the mosque normally. We place our hands on the shoulders of the friends on our left and right. Then Kiai Rais took the microphone. My children, today we have perfected the giving of knowledge to all of you. Use it well and tawadu, full of responsibility. We are proud of you and happy to have become your teacher. Remember, as long as you're sincere, Allah will be happy to be your helper. Inna Allaha ma'ana. God is with us. Farewell. So Kiai Rais spoke in a tone that shook our hearts. The silence was broken by the sound of sobs here and there. The air was filled with compassion. Some of our friends' noses were red and wet, including Atang, standing next to me. Then, led by Kiai Rais, all the teachers shook our hands and hugged us one by one, saying farewell. Then my turn arrived, and Kiai Rais hugged me tightly, as if I were his only son about to head off to war. My boy, good luck. Life is only once, so live meaningfully, he whispered in my ear. All I could say was, bless me, Kiai. Thank you for your sincerity. I bit my lip, which had begun to quiver, touched by the embrace of the teacher I admire most. Next, thousands of our underclassmen shook our hands to congratulate us. Good luck. Pray for us to follow you was their standard wish. This was the night of most handshakes in history. More than 2,500 people shook our 400 hands, which means there were hundreds of thousands of handshakes that night. No wonder my hand felt sore, hot, and cold at the same time. We, the Fellowship of the Menara, had a group hug, a life full of ups and downs over the course of 4 years at our madrasah, had unified us in everlasting experiences and brotherhood. I couldn't find many words to say farewell to these friends of mine. We just hugged tightly for a moment. Said, the biggest one of us, widened his arms and hugged us all tighter. Atang's body shook from sobbing. Before long, my glasses were foggy and my nose sounded like I had a cold. The next morning, my madrasa or my boarding school was blanketed in fog. The cold morning breeze pierced the skin, but the Fellowship of the Menara and I were standing ready with our suitcases. Some buses going to different destinations. We are already lined up in front of the hall. We are going home. My mind was all over the place. I was sad to be part with my friends, teachers, and my beloved school. But I was also happy and proud to be an alumnus of this Pesantren. It had been a crowded home full of education, sincerity, given to us by our Kiai and our teacher. In my heart, I repeatedly thank my mother for forcing me to go to this madrasa. I would tell her this in person later. I was sure she'd smile. Today, there was no regret left in my heart. The past 4 years has been the best experience that a village boy like me could have. Now it is time for me to step forward and overcome the confusion about my future. To where would I step? The chartered bus heading to Bukit Tinggi rumbled out of our madrasa. Almost all of our heads turned to look back. The minaret still towered dashingly over us, reminding me of all the beautiful memories with the Fellowship of the Menara. The fog still hovered over the ground, making it look like the school buildings were floating in the sky. This was what I'd first seen when I arrived at my boarding school 4 years ago. And it was also what I saw on my last day at my Pesantren, a village in the clouds. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. There were some tough questions.
Booyah!